The Human Cycle by Sri Aurobindo. Chapter 16. The Supra-Rational Ultimate of Life. In all the higher powers of his life, man may be said to be seeking, blindly enough, for God. To get at the divine and eternal in himself and the world, and to harmonize them, to put his being and his life in tune with the infinite, reveals itself in these parts of his nature as his concealed aim and his destiny. He sets out to arrive at his highest and largest and most perfect self, and the moment he at all touches upon it, this self in him appears to be one with some great soul and self of truth and good and beauty in the world, to which we give the name of God. To get at this as a spiritual presence is the aim of religion, to grow into harmony with its eternal nature of right, love, strength, and purity is the aim of ethics. To enjoy and mold ourselves into the harmony of its eternal beauty and delight is the aim and consummation of our aesthetic need and nature. To know and to be according to its eternal principles of truth is the end of science and philosophy, and of all our insistent drive towards knowledge. But all this seems to be something above our normal and usual being. It is something into which we strive to grow, but it does not seem to be the normal stuff, the natural being or atmosphere of the individual and the society in their ordinary consciousness and their daily life. That life is practical and not idealistic. It is concerned not with good, beauty, spiritual experience, the higher truth, but with interests, physical needs, desires, vital necessities. This is real to it. All the rest is a little shadowy. This belongs to its ordinary labor, all the rest to its leisure. This to the stuff of which it is made, all the rest to its parts of ornament and dispensable improvement. To all that rest society gives a place, but its heart is not there. It accepts ethics as a bond and an influence, but it does not live for ethical good. Its real gods are vital need and utility, and the desires of the body. If it governs its life partly by ethical laws, because otherwise vital need, desire, utility in seeking their own satisfaction through many egoistic individuals, would clash among themselves and destroy their own aims. It does not feel called upon to make its life entirely ethical. It concerns itself still less with beauty, even if it admits things beautiful as an embellishment and an amusement, a satisfaction and pastime of the eye and ear and mind. Nothing moves it imperatively to make its life a thing of beauty. It allows religion a fixed place and portion. On holy days, in the church or temple, at the end of life when age and the approach of death call the attention forcibly away from this life to other life. At fixed times in the week or the day, when it thinks it right for a moment to pause in the affairs of the world and remember God. But to make the whole of life a religion, a remembering of God, and a seeking after Him, is a thing that is not really done even in societies which, like the Indian, erect spirituality as their aim and principle. It admits philosophy in a still more remote fashion. And if nowadays it eagerly seeks after science, that is because science helps prodigiously the satisfaction of its vital desires, needs, and interests. But it does not turn to seek after an entirely scientific life any more than after an entirely ethical life. A more complete effort in any one of these directions it leaves to the individual, to the few, and to individuals of a special type, the saint, the ethical man, the artist, the thinker, the man of religion. It gives them a place, does some homage to them, assigns some room to the things they represent. But for itself, it is content to follow mainly after its own inherent principle of vital satisfaction, vital necessity and utility, vital efficiency. The reason is that here we get to another power of our being, which is different from the ethical, aesthetic, rational, and religious. One which, even if we recognize it as lower in the scale, still insists on its own reality, and has not only the right to exist, but the right to satisfy itself and be fulfilled. It is indeed the primary power. It is the base of our existence upon earth. It is that which the others take as their starting point and their foundation. This is the life power in us, the vitalistic, the dynamic nature. Its whole principle and aim is to be, to assert its existence, to increase, to expand, to possess, and to enjoy. Its native terms or growth of being, pleasure, and power. Life itself here is being at labor in matter to express itself in terms of conscious force. Human life is the human being at labor to impress himself on the material world with the greatest possible force and intensity and extension. His primary insistent aim must be to live and make for himself a place in the world, for himself and his species. Secondly, having made it, to possess, produce, and enjoy with an ever-widening scope, and finally, to spread himself over all the earth life and dominate it. This is and must be his first practical business. That is what the Darwinians have tried to express by their notion of the struggle for life. But the struggle is not merely to last and live, but to increase, enjoy, and possess. Its method includes and uses not only a principle and instinct of egoism, but a concomitant principle and instinct of association. Human life is moved by two equally powerful impulses, one of individualistic self-assertion, the other of collective self-assertion. It works by strife, but also by mutual assistance and united effort. It uses two diverse convergent forms of action, two motives which seem to be contradictory, but are in fact always coexistent: competitive endeavor and cooperative endeavor. It is from this character of the dynamism of life that the whole structure of human society has come into being. And it is upon the sustained and vigorous action of this dynamism that the continuance, energy, and growth of all human societies depends. If this life force in them fails, and these motive powers lose in vigor, then all begins to languish, stagnate, and finally move towards disintegration. The modern European idea of society is founded upon the primary and predominant part played by this vital dynamism in the formation and maintenance of society. For the European, ever since the Teutonic mind and temperament took possession of Western Europe, has been fundamentally the practical, dynamic, and kinetic man, vitalistic in the very marrow of his thought and being. All else has been the fine flower of his life and culture. This has been its root and stalk. And in modern times, this truth of his temperament, always there, has come aggressively to the surface and triumphed over the traditions of Christian piety and Latinistic culture. This triumphant emergence and lead of the vital man and his motives has been the whole significance of the great economic and political civilization of the 19th century. Life in society consists, for the practical human instincts, in three activities: the domestic and social life of man, social in the sense of his customary relations with others in the community, both as an individual and as a member of one family among many; his economic activities as a producer, wealth-getter, and consumer; and his political status and action. Society is the organization of these three things, and, fundamentally, it is for the practical human being nothing more. Learning and science, culture, ethics, aesthetics, religion are assigned their place as aids to life, for its guidance and betterment, for its embellishment, for the consolation of its labors, difficulties, and sorrows. But they are no part of its very substance, do not figure among its essential objects. Life itself is the only object of living. The ancients held a different, indeed a diametrically opposite view. Although they recognized the immense importance of the primary activities, in Asia the social most, in Europe the political, as every society must which at all means to live and flourish. Yet these were not to them primary in the highest sense of the word. They were man's first business, but not his chief business. The ancients regarded this life as an occasion for the development of the rational, the ethical, the aesthetic, the spiritual being. Greece and Rome laid stress on the three first alone. Asia went farther, made these also subordinate, and looked upon them as stepping stones to a spiritual consummation. Greece and Rome were proudest of their art, poetry, and philosophy, and cherished these things as much as, or even more than, their political liberty or greatness. Asia, too, exalted these three powers, and valued inordinately her social organization, but valued much more highly, exalted with a much greater intensity of worship, her saints, her religious founders and thinkers, her spiritual heroes. The modern world has been proudest of its economic organization, its political liberty, order, and progress, the mechanism, comfort, and ease of its social and domestic life, its science, but science most in its application to practical life, most for its instruments and conveniences, its railways, telegraphs, steamships, and its other 1,001 discoveries, countless inventions and engines which help man to master the physical world. That marks the whole difference in the attitude. On this a great deal hangs, for if the practical and vitalistic view of life and society is the right one, if society merely or principally exists for the maintenance, comfort, vital happiness, and political and economic efficiency of the species, then our idea that life is a seeking for God and for the highest self, and that society too must one day make that its principle, cannot stand. Modern society, at any rate in its self-conscious aim, is far enough from any such endeavor. Whatever may be the splendor of its achievement, it acknowledges only two gods, life and practical reason, organized under the name of science. Therefore, on this great primary thing, this life power and its manifestations, we must look with especial care to see what it is in its reality, as well as what it is in its appearance. Its appearance is familiar enough, for of that is made the very stuff and present form of our everyday life. Its main ideals are the physical good and vitalistic well-being of the individual and the community, the entire satisfaction of the desire for bodily health, long life, comfort, luxury, wealth, amusement, recreation, a constant and tireless expenditure of the mind and the dynamic life force in remunerative work and production, and, as the higher flame spires of this restless and devouring energy, creations and conquests of various kinds, wars, invasions, colonization, discovery, commercial victory, travel, adventure, the full possession and utilization of the earth. All this life still takes as its cadre the old existing forms, the family, the society, the nation, and it has two impulses, individualistic and collective. The primary impulse of life is individualistic and makes family, social, and national life a means for the greater satisfaction of the vital individual. In the family, the individual seeks for the satisfaction of his vital instinct of possession, as well as for the joy of companionship, and for the fulfillment of his other vital instinct of self-reproduction. His gains are the possession of wife, servants, house, wealth, estates, the reproduction of much of himself in the body and mind of his progeny, and the prolongation of his activities, gains, and possessions in the life of his children. Incidentally, he enjoys the vital and physical pleasures, and the more mental pleasures of emotion and affection, to which the domestic life gives scope. In society, he finds a less intimate, but a larger expansion of himself, and his instincts. A wider field of companionship, interchange, associated effort and production, errant or gregarious pleasure, satisfied emotion, stirred sensation, and regular amusement are the advantages which attach him to social existence. In the nation and its constituent parts, he finds a means for the play of a remoter but still larger sense of power and expansion. If he has the force, he finds there fame, preeminence, leadership, or at a lower pitch, the sense of an effective action on a small or a large scale, in a reduced or a magnified field of public action. If he cannot have this, still he can feel a share of some kind, a true portion or fictitious image of participation, in the pride, power, and splendor of a great collective activity and vital expansion. In all this, there is primarily at work the individualistic principle of the vital instinct, in which the competitive side of that movement of our nature associates with the cooperative, but predominates over it. Carried to an excess, this predominance creates the ideal of the atavistic, to whom family, society, and nation are not so much a sympathetic field as a ladder to be climbed, a prey to be devoured, a thing to be conquered and dominated. In extreme cases, the individualist turn isolates itself from the companion motive, reverts to a primitive antisocial feeling, and creates the nomad, the adventurer, the ranger of wilds, or the pure solitary. Solitary not from any intellectual or spiritual impulse, but because society, once an instrument, has become a prison and a burden, an oppressive cramping of his expansion, a denial of breathing space and elbow room. But these cases grow rarer, now that the ubiquitous tentacles of modern society take hold everywhere. Soon there will be no place of refuge left for either the nomad or the solitary, not even perhaps Saharan deserts or the secure remotenesses of the Himalayas. Even, it may be, the refuge of an inner seclusion may be taken from us by a collectivist society intent to make its pragmatic, economic, dynamic most of every individual cell of the organism.